Dr. Jain, Mr. Rungta, Mr. Patodia, my friends from the industry, respected ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to be here this morning to talk about a subject which normally does not find its way into the, into lots of conferences. But I'm delighted to know that obviously CREDA has taken the initiative to talk about, addressing the skills gap. And I think a lot of good work has already been done. But really, I'm going to focus on a key research that we released last week. And, just the findings of this research are fairly staggering and something that we must all focus on if we're really going to look at, looking at our urban landscape over the next 10 years. Before I really kind of talk about this, just a little bit of just a quick background on the RICS and really why did we commission this research. RICS is basically a body committed to advancing standards in land, property and construction, and our focus is to create chartered core sector professionals for land, property and construction. So really that's our focus. So really that's really the context as to why this research was done. And obviously we qualify people across the entire gamut of skills that are required for working in land, property and construction. So really our focus is real estate and infrastructure as a whole. So where do we kind of stand in terms of our professionals in the real estate and construction sector right now? And basically what this research tried to do was look at the demand-supply situation in terms of professional skills in India. And really how many people are currently employed, what is the potential demand for real estate over the next 10 years. So really as we move to 2020, with all the population growth and urbanization that's happening, what is the potential demand for real estate space that is likely to be there? And really, in the context of all that demand, what are the total number of professionals required per unit area of developed real estate space? And then, what we try to do is really quantify, those numbers by skill sets. So really, how many architects do we need? How many planners do we need? How many civil engineers do we need? And that's really the key objective. And really, is the supply that is coming out of academia, is that sufficing in terms of where we need to be? So that's really the context of this research. Obviously being a not-for-profit body, we commissioned this research to an independent third-party firm. So Jones Lang LaSalle were the ones who've kind of gone about the data collection exercise and the analysis and have worked with our team to finalize these results. In terms of the methodology and assumptions, just quickly touching on really, this report is not necessarily only focused on real estate, but focuses on the built environment as a whole. And what does built environment contain? We've looked at real estate as an asset class, needless to say, obviously residential, commercial, retail, institutional, industrial and hospitality. We've looked at infrastructure facilities, including roads, bridges, ports, and the associated real estate that has to go into building all that. And then the services side of real estate, and that's really, what we've tried to cover in built environment. In terms of, how did we kind of go about forecasting the growth of this, how did we kind of get to forecasting the numbers? What we did do was that we looked at the contribution of real estate and construction as a, in terms of GDP. What we've tried to do is benchmark it against international trends of some of the major mature developed markets. We then have tried to look at, obviously, the growth in population. So, we all know the number of people who are likely to move to cities over the next 10 to 20 years. So, we looked at urbanization trends. We looked at workforce participation rate, and we look, by 2020, close to 585 million people will be employed. So, we looked at those factors. And, on the basis of that, we developed a model to obviously arrive at the numbers that we've done, and including looking at planned investments in infrastructure, which are in public domain. Then what we tried to do was look at the typical project life cycle and the type of skills required. So really right from project conceptualization, land acquisition, project finance, design and planning. So across the entire gamut, what are the skills required, and what kind, so, to ensure that, we had specifically the numbers for every category available, and then also qualitative skill sets that are currently missing in the sector. What we've tried to do is really break up the entire numbers into core sector professionals. Of course, CREDA is doing some fantastic work in terms of, CREDA Pune is doing some fantastic work in terms of, in terms of skilling the workers. But I guess our focus really is, at least in terms of the RICS, is focused on the core sector professionals and how can we cultivate more, and contribute to the needs of the sector. Obviously, some key assumptions were made that population will grow at about 1.5%, which is really the average growth over the period 2001 to 2008. We've looked at an urban population increase of about 2.88%. Again, that's the trend that's been witnessed between 1991 to 2011. And we've looked at workforce participation rate, which will be growing at about 1.67%, which is really what is the historical trend. And then there were some fundamental assumptions made in terms of the amount of square footage for different categories. And that's the basis for the number that we've kind of come up with. Now, what are the key findings of the report? That's the more important bit, and that's what I'm here to focus on. But just before I get to that, just talking about the fact that today, the contribution of real estate and construction, if you look at 2011 numbers, is a staggering 253 billion. So that's really what the contribution is, which is about 17.4% of India's GDP. And, we've tried to take that as the benchmark that, the markets, and more evolved markets have matured at about 15 to 18% levels. And that's the basis for some of the growth assumptions that we've made. Population, we all know, is likely to be about 1.38 billion by 2020. 36% of that will be urban population. So just between now and the next 10 years, we will add 123 million people in the cities. And that's an important aspect that we've taken into account in arriving at the numbers. 97 million jobs will be added in the next 10 years, and of that, 27% of the workforce is likely to be employed in the services sector, which will mean about 36 million jobs. And then, obviously, another 51 odd million people employed in the industrial sector. So again, all this is, the kind of numbers that have kind of come out. But more importantly, I think this is important because this is a real estate forum. What we looked at, if everything, obviously going by the projections that have been made, and if you look at population growth, if you look at urbanization trends, if you look at all those factors, and everything that has to be built is built, the total quantum of real estate required is likely to be 95 billion square feet over the next 10 years. I think that's the most important finding. 95 billion square feet by 2020 is what is the anticipated demand. Taking into account our projections, for all the factors that we've taken into account. Now, which means about 8.7 billion square feet of real estate space needs to be delivered every year. Now, obviously, delivery hasn't kept pace, and that's part of the reason why, for us, the emphasis on trying to focus on aspects related to scale is a key part of what we're trying to do. So about 8.7 billion square feet is what ideally should be delivered every year, and that's an important number to focus on. Looking at the current scenario, of the 50 odd million people employed in the sector, about 2 million comprises non-core and core professionals. And really, in terms of definition of core professionals, we've got only about 600,000 core professionals as on date, which includes